Welcome back to Griffonomics, where we conduct financial investigations to define the risk before we look at the reward. Today, we're diving into the cold chain sector, comparing Americold, Coldy, and Lineage, Line, the two behemoths responsible for keeping the world's perishable goods exactly where they need to be when they need to be there. This is a battleground of capacity, technology, and sheer operational efficiency. Both cold and line are severely exposed to structural risks, including extreme cost volatility and acute overcapacity risk, largely due to the fact that building temperature-controlled storage costs, 3 to 4 times more than standard dry warehousing. But the entire investment thesis hinges on one central conflict. Can Line's dominant scale and superior 75.7% occupancy rate compound growth, faster than Coldy's high-risk turnaround, can succeed in pulling its critically low 62.8% occupancy rate out of a very damaging margin squeeze?
That thesis statement captures the complexity perfectly, and it's essential for our listener to understand why this sector, which operates almost entirely invisibly to the average consumer, is so critically important right now.
Right, we're not just talking about storing ice cream.
Not at all. We are talking about the critical, often invisible backbone of the global food supply chain. This highly specialized infrastructure is vital for global resilience and combating global waste.
And the numbers on waste are just staggering.
Consider this astonishing statistic. Current global estimates show that nearly 40% of all food produced globally goes to waste, and a huge chunk of that loss is attributable directly to failures in temperature management. Somewhere in the cold chain network, the temperature failed.
So investing in the sector is, in a way, investing in efficiency and resilience on a global scale.
Exactly.
That's a powerful context. When you realize that improving cold storage utilization is directly fighting global food waste, the mission takes on a completely different scope. Let's start by unpacking the undisputed market leader, Lineage, Inc., or Line. They are a fascinating entity because they aren't just a traditional real estate owner. They've created a competitive moat based on overwhelming size and some pretty sophisticated technology.
Overwhelming is the operative word. Lineage has utilized strategic capital and aggressive acquisition strategies to build a dominant footprint that is now structurally difficult, perhaps impossible, for any competitor to replicate quickly.
Okay, so give us the numbers. How big are we talking?
As of the middle of this year, Q2 2025, they operate a massive network of over 480 warehouses, 481 to be exact.
481.
And that commands a colossal 3.0 billion cubic feet of capacity spread across 19 countries. This is global scale defined.
And when you drill down into their key operational areas, the scale becomes even more intimidating. We're talking about true market control.
Exactly. Zoom in specifically on North America, which is the highest value market. Line accounts for a staggering 33% of the entire North American cold storage capacity.
A third of the market?
One-third of the market under the operation control of a single entity. Globally, they command about 12% of the total capacity, but that North American dominance is an incredible barrier to entry.
Right. It makes them the number one player, not just in the US, but in a lot of other critical markets too.
Yes, Canada, the UK, continental Europe, and Australia. They can dictate terms and leverage optimization strategies that a smaller player simply cannot touch.
So their moat is certainly built on sheer square footage, but it runs deeper than that. Lineage's competitive advantage, what makes them much stickier than a traditional landlord, lies in something they call Global Integrated Solutions, or GIS. This moves them from being just a real estate investment trust or REIT to being an indispensable operational partner.
What's fascinating here is that dual nature. They own the expensive real estate, yes, but they also provide the entire logistical ecosystem wrapped around it. GIS is the holistic approach. They bundle the physical assets with mission-critical services like transportation management.
So getting the refrigerated trucks where they need to go.
Exactly. And specialized handling, refrigerated railcar leasing, and critical services like specialized case picking and complex order assembly.
Wait, let's pause on that operational distinction. If I'm a major food processor, say a frozen pizza manufacturer, why is bundling these services with Lineage better than hiring a separate trucking company and a separate handling service?
It comes down to control, efficiency, and data. If you use separate providers, you have multiple handoffs, multiple points of failure, and inconsistent data feeds.
Makes sense.
When Lineage manages the entire process under GIS, from the moment your pizza leaves the production line to the moment it's ready for the grocery truck, that single source of truth provides seamless accountability.
They become a one-stop shop.
That's their goal, and it transitions them from being a replaceable vendor into an indispensable partner. If a partner is managing your inventory, your transportation, and your order fulfillment, the switching costs are astronomically high. That's the definition of stickiness.
And that stickiness is reinforced, as the sources suggest, by a technological edge that goes beyond just having big freezers. They use advanced automation systems to optimize the physical space.
Absolutely. Think about the basic physics of a cold warehouse. You want to store as much as possible in the minimum amount of cold space possible because cooling air is the biggest expense.
Right.
Lineage uses systems like the Swiss Log Power Store, which employ high-density automation. This allows them to cram over 24,000 pallet positions into a relatively compact footprint.
And that automation has a direct impact on the bottom line.
It directly translates into reduced square footage required per pallet, maximizing throughput, and significantly reducing reliance on manual labor, which is expensive and hard to retain in specialized cold environments.
But the real intellectual property, the thing that I think is truly disruptive, is their data science strategy, which they've branded flywheeling. This is where AI moves from a buzzword to a direct cost-saving mechanism.
This raises an important question. How disruptive is this really to legacy cold chain operations? The answer is profoundly so. Flywheeling is leveraging advanced AI and machine learning, AML, to predict power price spikes. These facilities operate on massive, non-negotiable energy loads. They cannot simply turn off the cooling.
Of course not.
However, power prices fluctuate wildly throughout the day based on demand spikes, weather, and grid stress. Lineage's system predicts those costly peak windows with high accuracy and automatically adjusts the chilling cycles just enough.
So pre-cooling or slightly throttling back?
Exactly. To minimize consumption precisely during those high-cost periods without compromising food safety.
So they are essentially using the thermal mass of the facility, the frozen food, and the building itself as a massive battery, right?
That's a perfect way to put it.
They generate energy savings not by being less cold, but by being strategically cold when the power is cheapest.
Precisely. It's an optimization layer on top of a highly optimized physical structure. This level of granular cost control generates significant direct cost savings that feed right back into their operating margins.
And that's the flywheel part.
That's why they call it flywheeling, because the advantages compound on themselves. The margin can be used to offer better pricing or fund more automation.
That compounding effect is particularly impressive given their growth history. Lineage didn't start as one massive entity. They grew through an unbelievable 116 acquisitions, integrating that many disparate companies, often with different corporate cultures, different IT systems, and different processes, is usually a recipe for technical and operational disaster.
The risk of technical debt and cultural clash when executing 116 rapid mergers is immense. Many large companies fail at this. But Lineage seems to have mitigated this risk through forced standardization, centered on a unified technology platform. They successfully run a single monolithic enterprise resource planning system, an ERP, that ties the entire global network together.
And the success rate on that integration is stunning.
It is. A staggering 95% of their global warehousing revenue is integrated onto this single ERP system.
95%.
That means whether you are operating a freezer in Rotterdam or Texas, the operational processes, inventory tracking, invoicing, and reporting all follow the same framework.
And that helps with future acquisitions.
It ensures seamless communication, consistent processes, and, crucially, allows them to rapidly integrate new acquisitions with minimal friction. That unified data platform is arguably the true invisible moat that protects the value of their acquisitions.
Okay, that paints a picture of Lineage as a large, sophisticated, well-oiled machine, recently capitalized by a massive IPO. Now, let's transition to Americold, or Cold. They are the established incumbent with over 120 years of history and still significant capacity at 1.5 billion cubic feet. But while Lineage is currently playing offense, Coldy is fighting an existential battle against immediate operational distress.
Americold is navigating what management themselves described as incredibly icy waters. This is not a slight downturn. They are facing a convergence of challenges that are putting immense pressure on their financial margins. They identified a very unique situation characterized by 5 or 6 headwinds all hitting at once.
Let's list those out because it underscores the multi-front nature of their crisis. We're talking about macroeconomic pressures like rising interest rates and general inflation, geopolitical hurdles like tariffs impacting global trade, and then specific consumer spending hits.
Right, like recent cuts to government benefits, specifically the Supplemental Nutrition Program, or SNP, which translates into less consumer purchasing power for frozen foods.
The S&P cuts are a crucial point often missed by macro analysts.
It's a direct hit to demand. When government support for food purchases shrinks, those consumers disproportionately pull back on discretionary items, including prepackaged and frozen foods, which utilize the cold chain. But perhaps the most debilitating headwind of all is the acute excess capacity present in the cold storage market right now.
And that excess capacity is directly reflected in Americold's most critical vulnerability, their occupancy crisis. This is the number that should concern any investor looking at Coldy.
Absolutely. While Lineage is running at a very healthy 75.7% physical occupancy.
Coldy's physical occupancy fell to a critical low of just 62.8% in Q2 2025.
Just think about that gap. And you have to remember the structural costs we mentioned earlier. The cold chain requires massive high fixed costs. The power, the specialized maintenance crews, the security systems, that must be maintained 24/7.
Costs that don't go away if a freezer is empty.
Exactly. When your facility is 100% full, those fixed costs are spread easily. At 62.8%, you are essentially burning money, forcing Coldy to spread those enormous costs over far fewer paying customers, causing a severe, almost unavoidable margin squeeze.
And that low utilization makes them a target in the competitive landscape.
It does. Management explicitly reported that the oversupply, estimated at 6 million square feet of speculative cold storage delivered to the market between 2020 and 2023, has led to what they call irrational pricing from competitors.
Competitors who are just desperately trying to fill their own empty space.
That's the double whammy. Americold is suffering from high costs internally because of low utilization, and simultaneously facing external pricing pressure from competitors willing to sacrifice margins just to generate cash flow and keep their lights on.
So they're in a position where they can't rely on the market to save them.
No, they must execute an intense internal stabilization plan just to survive this period of oversupply.
Okay, let's detail that turnaround strategy,
Right.
because this is where the high-risk investment potential lies. Coldy is pulling two major levers. First, stabilizing revenue through contract changes, and second, optimizing operations through massive IT overhauls.
The contract transition is a major structural maneuver. They recognized their revenue base was too volatile, reliant on month-to-month or seasonal inventory spikes. They moved aggressively to secure predictable revenue by shifting 60% of their rent and storage revenue to fixed commitment contracts.
And that's a big jump.
A huge leap from where they were in 2021 when only 39% was fixed.
And they are securing these commitments with an impressive 8-year average term. What does locking in capacity for 8 years, even at 60% of revenue, risk?
It risks agility. If you lock in 60% of your space for 8 years, you secure predictable revenue, which is vital when fighting a margin squeeze. But if a major customer changes strategy or if the market dynamically shifts, say, demand suddenly surges in 2 years.
Americold has limited flexibility to capture higher spot market pricing because the space is already committed.
Correct. But for Coldy, right now, the financial stability provided by those fixed long-term revenues outweighs the short-term risk of limited agility. It's a survival strategy.
The second, equally massive lever they're pulling is technology specifically, streamlining their network to combat those high fixed costs. The cornerstone of this is a major IT undertaking, the rollout of Project Orion.
Project Orion is their new Enterprise Resource Planning System, their ERP, intended to unify and standardize operations across all 237 warehouses.
That sounds huge and risky.
It's a massive multi-year, multi-million-dollar undertaking. An ERP rollout of this scale, while necessary, carries inherent risks, implementation delays, cost overruns, and initial operational disruption. But if executed correctly, it will standardize processes, eliminate manual work, improve analytics, and truly give them more levers to pull than a traditional REIT to fine-tune operations and find hidden efficiencies.
Beyond the digital rollout, they are investing heavily in physical automation, trying to catch up to the type of efficiency we discussed with Lineage.
Exactly. They are focusing on ASR automated storage and retrieval systems. Think of ASRS as giant robotic cranes and shuttles that move pallets in and out of extremely high-density racks,
Reducing the need for people in freezing rooms.
and dramatically speeding up throughput. In the last year alone, Coldy has developed 5 fully automated facilities using ASRS. This is a direct competitive response to Lineage's physical superiority.
And they are looking to the absolute cutting edge with generative AI. Their management has identified over 415 potential use cases for generative AI to help them become smarter and leaner.
That number, 415, indicates they're exploring every operational corner.
It shows desperation, perhaps, but also a massive commitment.
It does. Those use cases likely include everything from optimizing truck routes and scheduling labor more efficiently, a huge cost driver, to highly accurate forecasting of demand and inventory levels. For a company trapped in a margin squeeze due to high fixed costs, utilizing AI to find even marginal efficiency gains in labor and logistics is essential. They need every fraction of a percentage point of cost reduction they can get.
So Americold is betting its immediate future on this internal efficiency drive, Project Orion, ASRS, and AI, all while carefully managing growth via a $1 billion development pipeline.
And that $1 billion pipeline is deliberately de-risked. They are heavily focused on strategic partnerships with firms like CPKC Rail and DP World.
So they're not building speculatively into an oversupplied market.
No, they are ensuring new builds are fully customer-backed and targeting a highly disciplined 10–12% return on invested capital. They are prioritizing quality of growth and strategic efficiency over sheer capacity expansion right now. They can't afford mistakes.
That sets the stage for the crucial financial comparison. We need to look at the balance sheets and capital structures, which are inherently more precarious in the cold chain sector than in dry warehousing due to that capital intensity.
That's right. Because of the high cost of building and maintaining these specialized facilities, the installation, the power generation, the complex machinery cold storage REITs inherently operate with higher leverage than standard REITs. However, when we look at Americold, the current financial stress is clearly visible in their debt load.
And how do their leverage ratios compare?
Cold currently operates with the highest leverage among its peers at approximately 6.3x net debt to pro forma core EBITDA.
So for a listener maybe less familiar with REIT finance, what does 6.3x leverage actually signal?
It signals that their debt load is quite substantial relative to their operating earnings. This ratio underscores the severity of the financial pressure stemming from their low 62.8% utilization. It tells us that debt servicing is straining their core cash flow.
And Lineage, conversely.
Lineage is better managed, operating at approximately 5.7x net debt to LTM adjusted EBITDA. But the real structural advantage for Lineage isn't just the slightly lower ratio. It's how they fundamentally change their cost of capital via the public markets.
Right, the $5.1 billion IPO.
Which was arguably the largest strategic capital event the sector has ever seen, the largest real estate IPO of all time. This wasn't just a validation of their business model, it was a financial weapon.
A weapon they used to pay down debt.
The vast majority of those proceeds were swiftly deployed for debt repayment.
And the impact was instant and dramatic.
Immediate and dramatic. The debt reduction resulted in a remarkable 55.7% reduction in interest expense in the first half of 2025 alone.
55.7%, that's a huge number.
It's massive. They're able to dramatically lower their average effective interest rate from 5.3% down to 2.9%, and they secured strong investment-grade credit ratings. BBB Plus at Fitch and Var2 at Moody's.
Let's reflect on the profound implication of that 55.7% cut. That's not just a nice number on the balance sheet. That is giving Lineage the ammunition to undercut Americold on price, or to fund further automation for the next 2 years.
You're exactly right. They've turned their financial advantage into an operational weapon in this oversupplied market.
It's the key insight.
It is. When your cost of capital drops that significantly, you gain immense financial flexibility. While Cold D is scrambling to generate cash flow just to cover its high fixed costs, Lineage has reduced one of its primary cost burdens, interest expense, allowing them to invest more. They have insulated themselves beautifully from the rising interest rate environment.
And we see the immediate pain reflected clearly in Americold's financial guidance, highlighting just how tight the margin squeeze is.
Precisely. Americold's management was forced to lower their full-year 2025 adjusted funds from operations AFFO guidance.
And AFFO, for our listeners, is the key metric for real profitability in a REIT.
It's the cash flow available to shareholders after adjusting for core costs. They lowered the range to $1.39 to $1.45 per share, down from a prior range of $1.42. That's at $1.52. This is a direct signal to the market that the lack of seasonal inventory pickup and the pressure from irrational pricing are severely impacting their bottom line.
Looking beyond the debt management, both companies are solidifying their future with strategic customer deals. Lineage, leveraging its scale, seems to have locked up one of the most stable future revenue streams possible.
Their strategic deal with Tyson Foods is a masterstroke in long-term stability. This landmark agreement utilizes Lineage's scale to manage a huge chunk of Tyson's cold logistics. It's expected to generate $100 million in incremental EBITDA impact by 2030.
Wow.
That is committed volume from one of the largest food producers in the world, hedging market volatility for years to come and providing incredibly sticky revenue base.
Cold, while focused on its customer-backed development pipeline, is also actively executing a smart strategy of portfolio rationalization. They are selling off the underperformers to fund the future.
That's a necessary tactical cleanup. They strategically exited 3 idle sites for $20 million and sold a Brazilian joint venture stake for $28 million.
And that capital is being redeployed.
It's being strategically redeployed into those higher return de-risked partnership projects that are guaranteed by anchor customers. While Lineage can afford to buy scale, Coldy must prioritize asset quality and efficiency.
Let's zoom out now to address the core risks and rewards that govern the entire sector. We've talked repeatedly about the expense of this business, but let's clearly define the cost of cold as the sector's primary structural barrier.
The structural cost barrier is profound, and it defines the financial dynamics of every company we're discussing. Building specialized cold storage costs 2 to 4 times more than building a standard dry warehouse, like those owned by Prologis.
And why is that? It's not just insulation, is it?
Well, it's more than that. You're not just building 4 walls and a roof.
Yeah.
You're building massive, highly insulated structures with thick concrete slabs, complex redundant cooling systems, specialized refrigeration equipment, and enormous power infrastructure capable of maintaining temperatures down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit.
And this capital intensity means 2 things for investors. First, that these companies inherently operate with higher leverage.
Correct. The upfront capital expenditure is so high that debt financing is unavoidable. You will not find an asset-light operator in this space. Second, and crucially, it explains why cold chain margins are uniquely vulnerable to cost volatility, more so than standard logistics.
Because they are highly operational, right? They don't just own the box, they run the machine inside the box.
Precisely. Unlike a standard REIT that merely collects rent, cold chain REITs directly operate the facilities. This means their operating costs are highly sensitive to 2 factors: the massive power loads required to keep everything frozen, and the costs of specialized, certified labor needed to maintain complex cooling equipment and manage specialized inventory.
So if utility prices spike,
Their margin erodes instantly. If labor costs rise 5%, their core business suffers acutely. This is why the utilization rate, Coldy's 62.8%, is not just an indicator of demand, it is a direct measurement of financial vulnerability.
we've spent a lot of time defining the risks and the current operational struggles, particularly Coldy's. But we have to remember the high reward side of the investment thesis. The long-term growth drivers are massive and non-negotiable.
They are structural and global. Despite the current oversupply issue, the long-term tailwinds are robust. The first is driven by basic demography, population and food demand. Global population growth requires a staggering 60% increase in food production by 2050.
60%.
You cannot manage that increase and move perishable protein and produce efficiently without sophisticated, highly reliable cold chain infrastructure.
Second, the cold chain is an essential tool for global resilience and waste reduction.
That staggering 40% of food waste we mentioned earlier. Improving the cold chain infrastructure is the most direct way to combat that loss. Every time a new, optimized, well-run facility comes online, it stabilizes the supply chain and saves food from spoiling.
And then there are consumer habits.
And finally, there are powerful consumer trends at play that drive demand for this specialized real estate. The global frozen food market is already enormous, valued at $153 billion, and is forecasted to grow substantially between 2024 and 2029.
And what's driving that?
This growth is driven by things like the explosion of complex meal kits, the increasing demand for high-quality fresh foods requiring specialized storage, and of course, the relentless growth of e-commerce and online grocery shopping.
Right. All of that requires refrigerated distribution networks running at peak efficiency.
Exactly.
So the demand for the product, cold chain storage, is guaranteed to increase long term. But the present operational struggle, the overcapacity and margin squeeze, is very real. This brings us to the final synthesis and the ultimate choice for the investor.
The core investment conflict is stark. You have to decide if you are buying airline for its superior utilization, 75.7%, its dominant defensible scale, and its proven aggressive financial management that cut interest expense by over half. Or are you placing a bet on Cold Day for its high internal efficiency drive, Project Orion, AI, ASRS, and its turnaround potential stemming from that critically low 62.8% occupancy?
When we synthesize the operational metrics, occupancy, technology, leverage, and cost of capital, which company is better positioned right now?
Based on current operational metrics, financial stability, and the depth of its technological and logistical moat, GIS and Flywheeling, Line is a superior company.
No question.
Their scale allows them to be exceptionally sticky with major customers like Tyson. Most critically, their massive 55.7% reduction in interest expense provides them with insurmountable financial flexibility, positioning them perfectly to weather the sector-wide oversupply storm and the ongoing pricing pressure. They're operating from a position of financial strength that allows them to play offense.
And that makes Cold a high-risk turnaround play. What is the precise metric Americold needs to hit to justify an investor's faith in the turnaround?
Coldy's requirement is absolute. They must prove their turnaround first. This involves more than just launching Project Orion or signing a few long-term contracts.
It's all about utilization.
The company must successfully raise physical occupancy into the mid-80s range. That is the minimum threshold required to adequately cover their immense high fixed cost structure and neutralize the competitive damage caused by irrational pricing. Until that operational utilization metric improves substantially, the high leverage, 6.3x, and severe margin squeeze make the stock too volatile and speculative for a core investment.
It's fascinating how technology has become the core battleground in this real estate sector. The sources highlighted that location leverage, where you put your facility, is often based on transport and labor cost savings. But if the cold chain sector continues to aggressively adopt technology like AI and ML to optimize energy use and labor scheduling, the operational differentiation will eventually stabilize. When Coldy's efficiency gains finally stabilize its operating costs enough to neutralize that persistent irrational pricing competition, the operational aspect might fade. What happens then?
That's a great question.
Does this simply revert back to being a pure real estate play where location is the only differentiator again?
That's the structural question for the next decade. If the efficiency gap closes, the value reverts to the irreplicable nature of the land and the strategic location near ports and population centers. But for now, Line has bought years of operational advantage by paying down its debt and leading the technology curve.
Risk defined, portfolio protected.